Hey, hey, how many of you just now stopped and tried to follow my finger and my eyes to figure out what I'm pointing at? That is the power of line. See, the implied line from my finger to whatever it is that's supposed to be over there, or from my sight line as I look in that direction, is moving your eye, even though I didn't say that you were supposed to do that. Line is especially powerful as we are looking at comics. For example, in this first comic here by Yang, look at how line, both the line implied by the words, the lines that are going behind the deity as it enters into Little Bao, how that is showing action. It's the same as we see here, where both the letters and the lines demonstrate the action of that foot hitting Little Bao's face. Lines are indicative of movement, and in fact, you imitate the movement as your eyes move up and down, side to side, following those lines. Here, we see lines doing the same thing. Lines are demonstrating the speed of the moving ambulance as we see Kareem jumping out. Here, lines caused by the smoke are demonstrating the action that has just occurred as he has jumped down from the hospital and into the pavement. Lines are our movement, lines create shapes, lines tell a story in a graphic novel. Think about line, color, bodies, facial expressions, identity. How are these things being expressed in ways that are unique to the graphic novel? So here, look at the way color is used to illustrate the different deities that Little Bao has called down. And look how it's used here to illustrate the divine for Vibiana. Here, color is muted gold, and we see that consistently whenever Christian deities are called upon, whether it's saints or Christ or whomever. Gold, sort of a muted color, represents Christianity, while vibrant colors represent Chinese deities. What does that say? How is that differentiating between these different sources of superpower, as Yang terms it? Color is not used in black. Everything is done with lines and shadow. How does that send a different message? How is the feeling of this image different than the feeling of these images? Here, color creates a vibrancy, but it also creates a flatness. Because if you notice, the colors are not shaded. Bodies are flattened by a single color without shading, suggesting more of a cartooning and creating distance between the viewer and the action. Whereas the shading here suggests a much more realistic sense of depth, creating something that's a little bit more visceral. And does that respond to the different intended audiences? Clearly, black is aimed at an adult audience, which is something that graphic artists last week were very concerned about. This shift from a child-centered focus to the adult focus that graphic artists wanted to have for their work. Whereas Yang is very clearly pursuing a child audience and perhaps muting the violence of these scenes by flattening them out with this use of color that sort of flattens the area and reminds the viewer that this isn't happening to them, this is happening a distant time, a distant place, and so they don't need to be scared. Color, line, image are essential to the story that you see in a graphic novel. And for this next activity, you are going to think about ways that you are doing that on your own.